Akinlabi in the back. And I'm looking to see if I'm missing anybody at the moment. No other elected or government folks at the moment? We'll get there. Okay, so next is a presentation from Akinlabi Mackall.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to speak. As I said in the brief comments earlier, I hope to hit about 6 or 7 high points as to what may be very effective in helping us transform the educational system. But my focus will be on 2 things. Primarily within the student issues area, the educational achievement gap, and the whole notion that affective development and preparation of students has been gravely under-focused on. And that lack of training and preparation on the part of teachers and school principals, let's be clear, those failures on the part of teacher preparation and training in the education schools, when we're fortunate enough to have people who've actually gone to ed school, those have been huge issues in dealing on a day-to-day basis in what is a crisis situation. Unfortunately, however, beyond the crisis situation, we have a question of how do we improve and make changes. And that really requires some fundamental going to the root cause kinds of things, and I'll try to touch on that now. Among the most critical areas that we'll want to address is the whole question of governance and legislation. Laney and others have spoken about the nature of the leadership within the public school system here in New York City and nationally. The direction is highly troubling in that we've put the issues of our children and their futures in the hands of people who lack any formal training in education. Formal training is just a minimal level of requirement. That's a threshold, a floor upon which we want our people involved with our children and their education to be involved with. However, in the case of New York City, neither Mayor Bloomberg nor his specifically appointed Chancellor Klein bring that educational experience to the table. So we find that the question of governance by people who are, in fact, not educators, not schooled in that area, not sensitive to those issues, is a fundamental problem. And so that's why governance is an area that we cannot glide over or gloss over. And I guess that points out, rather cynically and ironically, how dangerous it was to have conceded complete power, if you will, to Mayor Bloomberg in the first place. Fundamentally, mayoral control, which we currently are suffering under in New York State, in many places, and specifically New York City, is one of the profound incongruities of a people trying to find a solution set for their children. What we need is an involvement of the community, and specifically, we must have the involvement of those who are most concerned with children, their parents, their guardians, those people within our community who focus on those efforts that are necessary to bring children into adulthood. Public education is a human right, and thereby it's the responsibility of society to not simply provide them with buildings, books, and those mechanical, categorical elements, but with a holistic, meaningful process in which the individual parts are not nearly enough, but when you put that effort together in an understanding way, that whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's one of the most profound reasons why I'm asking you here today, people who I have the understanding are not simply mildly interested, but people who are very concerned with the question of change and transformation. We ask you to really focus on that, because that's an area that has been grievously underlooked at, the whole question of attitudes and affective behavior. So with the area of legislation, we think that a People's Board of Education in which parents have a significant empowerment role, Not simply are they at the table, not simply are they considered as an afterthought as they are now when they make noise, but parents, because of their critical relationship to students, their children, they have a fundamental role of empowerment. In addition to that, we feel that people who have a stake in this, people who work within the school system, educators, school staff, they must be involved in a responsible way in the whole process of governance. So their representation through their unions and other structures is critical. Right now, we've seen a diminution of that. We've seen a loss of those responsibilities and roles, partially because of our leadership in the elected official arena, but also partly because of the weak leadership and misguided leadership and not committed leadership within the unions themselves. We think that teachers must have a real role. However, teachers already know and have a real responsibility. Whether we are successful with children or unsuccessful, teachers have a target on them and are recognized as extremely involved, extremely responsible, if you will. So that what we would like to see are teachers and other workers in education respected, treated with dignity, paid a responsible and good wage, and also given the opportunity to be represented by members of their unions who will in fact do just that, represent them. Additionally, we think that the area of curriculum, pedagogy, and instruction is crucial. Many of us talk about that within the questions of how can our students improve. Some of you here, and I would ask you to raise your hands if you've heard this, have heard about cultural relevancy with respect to curriculum. We've talked about cultural competency with respect to teachers being able to instruct and work with our students. These are issues that are not only important to our children, but we look closely and find that they're actually most important to teachers as well. Nowhere in the present school system do we find that teachers are fully brought to the awareness of the importance that they play with respect to being culturally competent. That is, that they are able to address the needs of their individual students and their classes. That is reflective of the communities that these students are coming from, respectful and mindful of the issues and challenges and celebratory experiences that these students have, and also mindful of the need to transform the attitudes and issues of students. Without teachers themselves being developed over years and with significant time input by their teachers, in fact, their mentors, their professional developers, we can't expect teachers to move forward in that area. I'm going to touch on Teach for America, New York City Teaching Fellows, and the broader teaching ed school situation as well as a part of this discussion. But let's just say that for too long, not simply the ability of a teacher to get a student to do well on a test, and then that teacher's ability to monitor the student's responsiveness or lack of responsiveness with respect to a score. Beyond that issue must come the whole question of how teachers understand how students are motivated, how students can become themselves very, very strong personalities, and we want to encourage that. At this time, there's a disconnect between what's going on in the ed schools, for sure, and even more significant of a disconnect between what goes on in those 3 and 4 weeks, and in some cases 5 weeks, in which a college student who's a member of Teach for America and or perhaps a new education person coming